Yes, it has been decreed by the elites and the ruling class in politics and the news media that it's all over, and you are not allowed to speak of any evidence because there is none. Well, let's talk about the things that are not in dispute, like the number of counties Biden won, a record low number of counties, less than 17% of counties across the country, and the record high number of votes that he got to be reelected. 80 million, over 80 million. Well, that's pretty impressive. So he must have had huge spikes in those counties. But it doesn't end there. He only got spikes. He underperformed in areas, in states that weren't swing states. He only overperformed in counties and cities that were swing states and major cities that are controlled by Democrats. So that lowers the number of places they had to have those spikes, which makes the spikes even greater. And wait, it doesn't end there, because Trump had a commanding lead in these states at 11 o'clock on election night. And everybody was told to go home and stop looking because we're going to stop counting. So the observers went away, cameras went away. They told us they were going to stop counting. And that's when hundreds of thousands of ballots showed up, all for Biden, when they said they weren't going to be counting ballots, but they counted them. But everything's above board because the powers that be, the elitists, we're supposed to be crazy. Trump winds up winning, 10 million more votes than he got when he initially was elected. Nobody has lost re-election with gaining the amount of votes that Trump has for re-election. But we made gains in houses, House of Representatives, and the Dominion voting machine. Just ignore that. Just ignore the whole thing there. Ignore the over 1,000 affidavits, sworn affidavits from just average, ordinary people who've got nothing to gain, who've opened themselves up to perjury. If they had lied in those sworn statements, they're guilty of perjury. Where are the witnesses countering that, putting themselves down, making sworn statements, countering that? No, it's just a bunch of jerks who've been hating on Trump for 5 years that say, no, they're wrong. But they don't have facing any accountability by saying that that's, no, nothing to see here. All those people are wrong and they're lying. Put yourself down in a sworn affidavit. And the courts. No, but he's lost all the court cases. No, actually, the courts have done this. La, 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 la. I don't want to hear the evidence. They haven't heard the evidence because they've just not accepted the cases, because then the evidence would come out. Now, the effect is the same thing as a loss, but it's not technically lost. They didn't allow the game to be played. And what would you do? If your guy was facing this and the opposing team was the one who said, you lost, you should accept it? What do you think you would do? And your guy, what would you want your guy to do? And if there was also tens of millions of other people who said, I think this is crap, wouldn't you want your guy to continue to fight and follow up every possible legal means? Well, if you're on a Democrat side, you probably would want them to do everything that was legal and illegal, but that's another story. It's not like the Democrats are acting out of character if they did steal this election, because, they've stolen elections before. You can go back to 1948. LBJ stole his Senate seat, the election for it, which led to him becoming vice president under Kennedy, and you know what happens there. They've stolen senatorial elections, Arizona, Minnesota, gubernatorial elections in Oregon, Washington State. They've rigged their own primaries against Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, and they've selected their own people, so they're not acting out of character. If they were to have stolen this election. People, the same side who attack Trump supporters anywhere wearing a MAGA hat in the streets, it wouldn't be out of character for them to throw Republican observers out of polling places, would it? It's not out of character. It's not a stretch to believe. Is it a stretch to believe the clerk in the Supreme Court who overheard the argument in the chambers saying, well, there's a precedence to hear this case from Bush Gore in 2000. Oh, but there wasn't riots. So we don't want to hear the case now because there's riots. Is it such a stretch to believe that there are a bunch of elected Republicans controlling state houses in these swing states, and let's say Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, even though they hold the majorities, that they're afraid for their life from terrorist thugs of Antifa, BLM, and the Occupy movement, those types, that they don't want this responsibility? Is that too hard to believe? Do you want to get spoon-fed your information from the mainstream media who despise Trump, the legacy media, and the Democrat Party who despise Trump, and never Trump Republicans who despise Trump, and you think that judges are beyond error? Well, the judges said this, and the media says this, and the Democrat Party says this, and all these government bureaucrat officials, you trust them? Come on, make up your own mind. Unless you think O.J. Simpson is innocent, and Daniel Holtzclaw, lesser known case, but you think Daniel Holtzclaw is guilty. So judges are beyond repair. You can't make up your own, you can't look at the facts yourself, come to your own conclusions. That's required in a republic, to hold these people accountable. But I know the door is closing, and there's not much left. The time is running out, and Biden probably will become sworn in. One last thing. It's kind of one of those things that this might be an Obi-Wan Kenobi moment where if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. That might be Trump, because if he's not holding the office of president, he's unchained. He won't have to perform the duties of president, and there's going to be nothing holding him back from going full out on an attack on the media and the corrupt government, the corruption that is out there. All right, look, I'm going to stop. Be excellent to each other. Sic semper tyrannis, and long live the Republic.